Done? Perfect. And an evening in the Funky Mental Verse. Following on from a little bit earlier and having had a little chat, this one I thought might be useful to go into how details can become so complicated that you get fixated on having to know something which doesn't allow you to move forward. Or it did with me anyway. I think it was, let's just say 2021, so mid 21 I started to look into, or I was shown, let's say, magnetism via Ken Wheeler, Theoria Apophysis. YouTube, absolutely incredible stuff, but stuck me in that area of this for, I don't know, three or 4 months of deep dive into what does this mean and how does it work. Toroidal fields and toroidal field generation. Now, this was to do with the frequency of light, the spherical frequency of light, and the agathon, the creator of light, the creation of light and illumination. So this went into principle and attribute, which they talk about the 1 and the 1, the Fibonacci scale. The 1 and the 1 are 1, and it's principle and attribute. So you have this concept of energy, material, attribute, but the principle is the energy, and the light is in the principle. The illumination is in the, what's the word? Attribute. Attribute. So the attribute is the illumination of the light, but not the light itself. And the light is the frequency of the spherical frequency of the material. The matter is light slowed down, if you will, a light at a density on its compression, and that becomes molecular. Denser, and the lower the frequency of it, the more dense it is, the higher the frequency, it changes its material status. This then, or it changes its elemental status, its physics. This then was an area for me to consider deeply, was what does that mean? How does that work? Because this isn't what I thought before. Having looked a little bit at string theory and not being an academician or a mathematician or any of these words in the old world, going into all of that stuff just made no sense. It would take too long for me to try to learn it from the human level or whatever this, it would indoctrinate and limit. So I didn't do that, and I didn't have those tools beautifully. I was blessed not to be proficient in those areas past what I needed. So I was looking at the toroidal field and the torus, but in this area, the abstract level of information, the abstract value, I was finding to be more and more valuable. Because in the last video, or the last chat, I talked about how defined value, defined as in we understand what it is this fact. Defined value, defined value is not valuable. It's the abstract value where true value lies, past material, past what we believe, past what we can see, in the inconceivable. So the torus is known, the magnetic field is understood, it's seen, the ferrofluid liquid, the visual cells, the ferrocells, and these ideas can be seen, and this is visual. But what can't be seen is where the abstract lies. And that's where my conjecture went, because there's so many thoughts about what could be seen, there's so many ideas, there's so many narratives and so many limitations and conclusions already made. But there wasn't anything said about the, what's it called? The middle. The what now? The middle of it. The hyperbola. The hyperbola. The hyperbolic. So the torus comes out like this, but there's a gap in the middle which looks like this, or looks like an hourglass. What was that? What was that? What was that was there but that wasn't there? What was that? That was what attracted my attention, and that means you can't see it. You've got to have a think about what it possibly could be. And this took me into the principle, or the ether, or the energy of creation, or the substrate, or the discrete layer, or whatever you wish. And in the journey of discovery through this, I was already working with, some would call groundwork teams, divine teams, or energetic teams on the ground, divine teams, words, on more dimensional levels, more interdimensional or more non-visible energetic layers of creation itself, herself, himself, doesn't matter, creation. But it was from the hyperbola, the hyperbolic, that I was interested. What is that? Now, we could see the force and motion, we could see the expansion of the torus, but what pulled it back and where did it go? What was this deceleration and back to the principle? So the attribute and the principle, the attribute and the principle, but what was the principle? What does it look like? How does it work? Is that what we are? The principle? Are we the principle? Could we possibly be the principle? And if we are, how do we modulate? How do we create? How do we command? How do we manifest the attribute in a harmonic, peaceful, loving, truthful, modulated way that is creational? How would that work? I could see that there was a molecule, I could see that there was an atom, I could see these names, I could see that there was a sphere, a spherical frequency. I could represent that fractally as everything, and I could see that being an atom. The neutron that they call it being the Zen point that Buddhism calls it, the center point, the middle where there is no thing. The middle of the magnetic, there is no magnetism. The middle, there's another one, I can't think what it is with the middle. Yeah, the immovable mover in another term in Buddhism, the immovable mover, the hub of the wheel, the spokes all firing out to the wheel of samsara. I could see that was a possibility, but what did it mean? And I could also see that it was a fractal. It could be fractal. No smallest, no biggest, no start, no finish, eternal and infinite. A fractal of itself, containing everything all the time, every time, at different layers and different levels. And what did that look like? So I had this concept of a discrete layer, the ether, used to be number one on the periodic table of elements until it was removed and materialism took over. The zero, was it? Zero. Materialism took over and matter took over and particle physics and particles and waves and everything else became. But in the 1800s, 1850s, 1880s, this wasn't the case. Yet we think we're at the peak now, but it becomes evident over time that this is a devolution and not an evolution system. So we're not at the peak, but we are remembering to see through the limitation, and what was being taught and what was being understood was limited, not expansive. It created and it brought in the limitation and made it material and made it quanta, made it mathematics and made it quantifiable. You had to have equations for it, but the abstract didn't have that. It could be. And I think I don't know which one it was, Greek maybe, that used to, I can remember the 3 R's when I was younger, the arithmetic, reading, writing and arithmetic, arithmetic. But that changed to mathematics. What's the difference? Well, I believe arithmetics had abstract value sets, notions, and not facts, but no identity, not a label, but a value set within it that people could work with, that we can't work with now because it's not peer reviewed or it's not got an equation that fits and nobody's going to like it because mine's better than yours. And this idea that crept in. So I was in this hyperbola, in this hyperbolic, and I'd been involved with I'll get into what I was involved with possibly a little bit later on, but interdimensional geometries would be a best way of describing it. From what I was informed was the multifaceted layer, which is the layer in between the one and the one, where the one becomes the one, the attributional layer, let's say, on a geometric scale in abstract, unseen spectrum of light, let's call it that. But in that hyperbola, I was trying to contemplate how this worked, and how does what they used to call ether or inertia being at rest, at peace, how does that move? What causes it to move? In the book it says in the beginning was the Word. Well, the Word is a pressure medium. Pressure causes disturbance, perturbance of the ether causes light. In the Word, in the beginning was the Word, let there be light, the attribute. So is the principle the Word, and the attribute the manifest? What does the Word look like if it's not in existence? Who commands the Word? Who commands the perturbation of the ether? These ideas were very prevalent at the time of I wonder. But I was more involved at this stage now with how do these spheres of influence, how do these electromagnetic frequencies work with each other? How does magnetism, attraction, repulsion, these ideas, it's not really that, it's nowhere near that, it's not magnetism at all like that. But how does that look in real time? Can I see it? Can I play it out? Hello. The thunder and the lightning has just started, beautiful. So I was trying to look at how this modulation can work inside the atomic, which is effectively the universe, fractally. If one truth there, then one truth there. The universal truth had to be standard, maintained, not an independent one. It can't be true here, but not there, if it's going to be a core truth. So everything got stripped down to it has to be universal. What truth can you expand into infinity and hold, and how? This is where I kind of was when I'm talking about the complication and the detail and the understanding and the depth of knowledge. You're talking about, you can possibly imagine, I hope, or follow the path, if you like, into trying to understand how, let's say, hydrogen and helium, the two base atomic structures or the two Lego blocks of creation, compound together at different frequencies, at different symmetrical spins, at different directions, at different commands and codings and modulations of them to conjoin with other elements to become other elements at different. The building blocks of creation at different levels of elementals compounded upon each other to create a different form. But that's an attribute of the principle. So within creation is everything needed for every infinite creation via an infinite fractal of itself. This got to the point where I was stuck in could be called intellectualizing or overcomplicating things, thinking I needed to know how it worked, as opposed to accepting that it did. What if that's enough to know, is just to accept that it works, but it doesn't work like we believe. We are both the principle and the attribute. How does that work? Why not? Why not? The mirror reflection, if you will, of the symmetry of creation, creation and creation, the material creation and the mental creation, the imagination and the fact, if you will, even if it is what some would call, or what we could see as a holographic system, it's real, is it not? Until it isn't anymore. And then the truth changes. So I was stuck in this area of trying to see how individual frequencies inside an individual atom, all the spectrums of light could focus in a central point outside, create the atomic, and see how each one of those spectrums moved and was wobbling or was carrying information, its frequency and its modulation within that frequency. And I lost control of it. I didn't lose control. I was stuck for a while trying to think, I can't do this unless I see that, unless I know what that is, and how can I make. Of course, these were limitations in a belief system that I thought I needed to know details, which became irrelevant later, but were really very relevant at the time. So that these areas we can get stuck in, the limitations are what we can conceive of, and our ability to go past them is to trust that we don't need the complication. The complication is okay and it will become evident later. But we've got to carry on. And that requires us going past this doubt, this plateau, this overcomplication into a place of release and trust and letting it go and letting it be and moving forwards with what we can take forwards, which is the simple. It doesn't matter, because if it did, I'd know about it. And carried on. So what would you say? Is that gone into a little bit more of that? Would you give me any more that we could talk about on this? I could talk about on this.
No, we're thinking just that the attributes are always the limitation, and it's the one that changes.
So the attributes are the form. The function is the energy. The function is harmonic if it's got love. The two principles that I understood to be true were love and consciousness. So when they're working together, that's harmonic. When they're separated, it's distortion or disharmonic. The attribute is corrupted, is played out through the modulation. And if that comes from a negated memory or a limited source within, then it plays out with that limitation. But the principle behind is the true self, the soul. What we're playing out is what we believe ourselves to be in form, which is complicated and corrupted by belief systems which are limited. But the soul isn't. The closer we get to releasing the more we release the need to be something, the need to do something, the need to prove something out there, to be special or to be this, that and the other, or to understand it, the more we can release that, the closer we are to the understanding of it. The more we chase it, the further we are away. So the attribute and the principle are one. It's the actions that follow that forget that, because the core is covered, or the core is distorted by memories which are falsely imprinted through a design of negation, judgment, blame, when we didn't know any better. So these areas of needing to know and needing to identify and are follies. They're follies eventually, because they are necessary steps if one takes them. But in reflection, they're unnecessary if one trusted earlier. That doesn't make them wrong. It just means that you can learn from them later, that you don't need to go through so many steps of denial. You can trust earlier, and it will release the friction of the denial. It's all about trust and understanding and a belief system into the abstract, not the known, the abstract value sets which are innate and exist as the soul, and are as the soul, fractal in existence. Lovely. Much love to everyone.